Man, I'm gonna say what's going on, what's going on, what's going on, how everything going today. Man, we're excited about being here today. We are excited about manhood moments in our podcast. And brothers, how you all doing out there, man? Talk to me. How things going?
Everything is going well this way.
Good
I'm happy to
deal.
be back, seeing you guys' face.
D Patrick,
Yeah.
what's going on, man?
You know what? I cannot complain. I mean, happy to be here. Glad we're kicking this off live in a new time and new space.
That's it. That's it, man. I'm excited about everything that's going on too with us, man. This has been this has been one of those I dare to say crazy weeks, man. And just with technology and everything else that's going on, it seems like, man, I'm just thankful that we here, that we made it, man, that we here. So, I think today, man, we're gonna have a really good conversation, if you ask me. We we we've been trying to prepare this conversation for what we call the reset. And when we talking about the reset, man, this is something I think that we all have to experience in our life in dealing with various moments and times and problems and challenges and successes and all this stuff, man, that causes us to have to reset. So I'm excited, man, about this conversation today. No, and when we talking about the reset, what you think, man? Talk to me a little bit.
I think it's a good time. I think we all need to reset. I think a lot of times we as humans look at it's the new year, so I'm gonna change some things up. But there's other times when something is pulling you that you know you need to reset. You need to completely start over, have a different view, but you need that reset. And it just doesn't happen after the new year. It happens anytime.
Yeah, life is a journey. And so while we're on this journey, from time to time, we're gonna do what we what I like to call hit a wall. You go down a path, you got a plan, and sometimes things just don't work out. Things don't line up. Sometimes you have to take a step back, regroup. Maybe look at a different vantage point, and then take a different approach. So, I mean, reset is a part of life.
That's it. That's it. And man, real quick, as always, we try to make this as educational as we can and making sure that individuals really get a good understanding and some things that we can build off of. So as usual, we got something. We're gonna bring in our brother who can get a chance and talk with us a little bit.
How do I reset my life? I mean, what do I have to do to just have a fresh start? It's a great question. And in this video, I want to share 5 steps that you can take that help you move towards resetting your life. So if you've been following my channel, you know that I am on my own personal journey towards resetting my life, towards living a more intentional life using tools like minimalism. And if you've already started your journey, that means that you've already done or you're actively doing the first 2 steps that I have on my list towards resetting your life: acknowledge and release. But if you're just now starting out, this is your first time approaching minimalism and working to live a more intentional life, I want to take a quick moment to first explain what these first 2 steps mean before I kind of dive deeper into what the other 3 are. Number 1 is acknowledge. Now, the first thing you need to do before anything else is take a step back and look at your life. Look at your routines, your habits, how you live your life, the things that you enjoy doing, and really figure out, what do I have in my life? What can I acknowledge in my life as an issue, as something that I need to let go of, as something that I need to change, as something that I'm currently unhappy with? You have to figure out what that is. You have to acknowledge what that thing is before you can make any adjustments or changes or anything to fix it or correct course to where you want to actually head in life. What is it in your life that you are currently unhappy with? What is it in your life that is blocking you, that is slowing you down, that is just something that you have to let go of? What is that thing? Number 2 is release. Now, this is something that we've all are already currently doing, and that is decluttering the space around us, letting go of those things that we're unhappy with, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, friendships, relationships, whatever that thing is that you've acknowledged in step one as being an issue, as being a block in your life, as being something that you just, why am I holding on to this? Step two is to let it go, to release it, to declutter your space, to declutter mentally, declutter emotionally, to just let it go. Free yourself of whatever that is that you've acknowledged in step one. Now, before I dive into what number 3, 4, and 5 is, I first have to say that steps 1 and 2 are never really done. As we're growing through this journey and growing to living a more intentional life for ourselves, a life that we're happy with, we're always going to acknowledge things that we need to change and then release those things. And with that said, the third thing on my list is gratitude, showing thankfulness for the things that you allowed to keep into your life, the things that you still have in your life that are of value to you. You have to show gratefulness for those, thankfulness for those. And there are 2 ways you can do it. You can do it written. So for me, it's through my poetry, through my creative writing. And then you can do it verbally, out loud, just professing the thankfulness that you have towards the people in your life, towards the things in your life. You know, the little things, we sometimes forget to be thankful for the little things, and showing gratitude for even the smallest of things in your life can speak volumes to where you're headed on your journey. So I'm always encouraging you to just show gratitude in step number 3. Number 4 is to declare. Now, once you've acknowledged the issues or things you need to change in your life and you've released those things, and like I said, you're never really done with steps 1 and 2, then you show gratitude. You show thankfulness for the things that are still in your life. And I am currently in that phase of my life. I have a gratitude journal and things like that. But now it's time to declare, to profess the things that you want to bring into your life, the things that you want to see happen in your life, the joys that you want to see come alive, and the happiness that you want to see for yourself, the people around you. Declare what that is for you. Profess what it is for you. If it's a new job, profess that you're gonna have that new job in your life. If it's to be healthy, happy, whatever it is in your relationship, your marriage, profess those things, declare those things to be true in your life. Now, before I share the 5th thing on my list, of course, you already know, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to my channel. I talk about minimalism and intentional living, but also share my creativity and ways to build on your passions here as well. So if you enjoy either of those things or both, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and tap the bell so you're notified every time I drop a video. So after you've acknowledged, released, expressed gratitude, and declared the things that you want to happen in your life, what do you do next? Number 5 is to take action. Have you ever heard of the saying, faith without work is dead? It's the exact same thing. If you're proclaiming and declaring these things that you want to happen in your life after you've decluttered and let go of everything that is roadblocking you, everything that is in your way that you're unhappy with, after you've professed what you want to happen, if you're not actively working for those things to happen, they're not going to happen. Just like the saying says, faith without work is dead. You have to take action on the things that you want to happen in your life. You've already taken action towards decluttering and clarifying your life, decluttering mentally and emotionally, letting those things go. You're taking action there, but what actions are you taking now towards the goals that you have for yourself? If it's to be healthy, to be in shape, to move up the corporate ladder, if that's your dream, or whatever it is for you, I don't know, whatever it is for you, what are you actively doing? What steps are you actively taking to move towards that? And I'm going to continue to preach that message.
So man, so when you think about it, man, what I will admit that today for me, this was a challenging week for me, right? And so I can think of so many ways that I had to reset. In particular, when I'm thinking about, our podcast, right? Because we had so many technical problems we had never had really before. And when you're utilizing a social media outlet, it was really difficult for me, because it's like trying to put the information out there and all that other stuff, man. And all of a sudden you're getting blocked and don't know why we're getting blocked, and knowing, okay, man, I know I ain't putting nothing crazy out there. And so why am I being blocked, and having to go back and reset and start over, right? Start over. So to me, what our brother was sharing man, first thing I had to acknowledge was I am not in control. I can't control this situation. I have to give it over to a power that's greater than me to allow my peace to stay. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about hitting that wall. I mean, and that's life. Those are roadblocks, right? This was a challenging week for me. Well, going into the week, right? I got my wisdom teeth, well, two of them out, right? So I
Mhm.
spent the weekend bleeding and not being able to talk, right? So, and what got me was I had to reprogram myself just in that instance because she's like, well, you can't spit for, and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? But she said, you could get dry socket, which apparently, dry socket is exposed and it's supposed to be worse than childbirth. And I was like, well, I don't really know what that feel like, but I'm not even getting ready to venture into that. So I really had to rethink about that. So it's something as small as that, or we got a big major issue with technology, or even at work or in life. Some things don't
Mhm.
go the way we want it to go or the way we expect it, and again, we have to take a step back, regroup, and a lot of the things that the brother said, acknowledge, all of that before we plot our course forward. But it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I agree. I had a crazy week as well, and work was very unpredictable. So I had to adjust and not get frustrated with the plan because I had my days pretty much set out. And my boss said, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I just had to change my mindset that I got to get it done and just look at it a little bit differently. That it is what it is. Get the job done.
Yeah, man. When we thinking about this, this idea of reset or what have you, one of the things that comes to mind was we were on Saturday mornings, right? And we were coming in on Saturday morning, and was that the best use, of our time, of our energy? Were we reaching the greatest capacity that our podcast could reach, right? And so it was the idea of saying, okay, well, maybe we need to change the day of the week, right? Great idea, but did not know the challenges that will come with it, right? And preparing for this transition and prepare and even when we're thinking about resetting, one of the things that I know that comes to my mind is the fact that there is no guarantee that when you reset that things are gonna be better.
That is true. That is true. So I will look at his third, the brother's third one, which was show gratitude.
Okay.
Because in that, it allows me to appreciate all the good things previously. So
Uh-huh.
even if we're having a bad time or we may not reach where we want right away, we still have gratitude of the little things. I've woken up this morning. I used to do when I'm driving to work, I would just be like, thank you. Just
Hmm.
showing gratitude to you all. Saying you having a bad week trying to do the technical part, but once we all get together, we're showing you gratitude, man. We appreciate you doing the behind the scenes stuff. That all we really gotta do is show up early, work through some of the technical stuff. But it is we appreciate you helping us out, and
Hmm.
then you get into the reset. And the way I look at here is that unlike life and almost like a video game, if the game is not going right, you get the reset button and start over. If if everything just broke down today, send an email out, post out, reset for the first of August. But in
Hmm.
life, though, you really can't. You can push that reset button, but you don't always start fresh. So
Yes.
that's when you go towards the rest of what the young brother was talking about when you acknowledge the issue, release. But I always give gratitude first and foremost.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's it, man. Go ahead, T. Patrick. I think T. Patrick having some technical difficulties going on there, and so So when I think about this, why he works through those, man, that's another thing. Got to reset, right? We're right now when we're looking at where we want to be in life, right? And I could think of not just something like this as minor as technical issues, but I could think about some real life issues. Right.
Yes.
And I think all of us in our lives, we have plans, we have these goals. And even when we're younger, right, we have goals and we have plans that we want to be married one day and that we want to have this family. We want to raise our kids, be with one wife, have a house, buy a house, have a really good career, things like that. And then life happens,
Yes.
right? Life happens. And whether it's because of us or whether it's because of our decisions or whatever the case is, life happens. So what do we do when that life happens? How do we deal with that? Welcome back, you good, man?
Hey, listen,
Can
listen.
you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I mean, I had a fire thought. I mean, a real good one too, right?
We was waiting too.
But
But
it
you had to
had.
reset.
Hey, well, you know what? I'm glad that happened because it really illustrates my point. Because my point was going to be about starting fresh, and in this perception. I mean, we talk about that a lot, but you know, I question whether we actually really start fresh. I mean, and the reason I say that is because I just lost internet connection. I'm not, unless I get a check, I'm not going to announce what internet I got. But it does this from time to time. So, if y'all want to shout out to the check, but you know what I mean? Listen, you know, but even though I went away, I'm still coming back with the same thought, which is exactly
Uh-huh.
this. Like when we reset, we still have the same experiences. We still have the same emotions. We still um, we're still cognizant of what has happened in our past.
Hmm.
You know, so do we start fresh or do we start again from a different approach? And we kind of had this
Hmm.
conversation kind of in our pre-session where we used illustrated the belt and the adjustment, different things like that. Tony talked about, well, you could lose weight. I'm like, I guess you could, that'd be different, but it's still the same body, it's still the same belt, it's still the same everything, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, so you know what I mean. I I kind of put that out there. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Get some perspective on that.
Yeah. So since you went away for a second and you came back, just to piggyback off what Saint said, life is our best teacher, and at some point in time, there's a reset. That, for example, mine was graduate high school. I'm gonna go to undergrad. I'm gonna finish in 5 years because I was wrestling off redshirted. So I was gonna do my 5 years, get my degree in criminal justice, and go to law school. That was the plan. And then life happens. I have a child. I finished in criminal justice, and I reset my mind that okay, I'm not sure if I want to go to grad school or law school, but I set myself up to decide which route I want to go. And because I had a child, it was the reset of my profession. If I wanted to get that law school debt or the
Hmm.
undergraduate debt, but at that point, it was a reset of my mind of where I wanted to go. And in our life, there's always a reset. That your first job you may not pay enough, then you're looking for another job. So to piggyback a little bit off what you, T. Patrick, is that sometimes getting a new job and moving is a complete new reset, but with experience. And then sometimes you're resetting within that same environment that you like your job, so you don't get a promotion, but you're resetting your mind on what you need to do to make yourself happy, successful in that job. Because say the next job would be California, you don't want to move, so I'm going to just reset my mindset in the office. So as to break it down, I acknowledge I have an issue at my job. I can't move, so I need to release. I need to emotionally look at things differently, physically do something different to de-stress, and then, take action, declare and then take action. So,
I was sitting there thinking about the question that T. Patrick asked about do we really start new, right? If when we reset, and that's a very interesting question because we still carry that body of knowledge. And the one thing I remember with each of the resets that I've had, right, is I remember the one thing that was constant was me. Right. It could have been other individuals, it could have been other situations, it could have been other jobs, but the one thing that was constant was me. And quite honestly, what I was finding out was I was bringing the same mindset into each of the situations, right? I was bringing the same views. I was bringing the same, and and I'm gonna tell you another thing real quick that I felt like I was bringing in. I felt like I was bringing in, um, as I think about it, I was bringing in probably that same negative perspective, right? Almost like bad happened before, so is it just a matter of time that bad may happen again, right? Or those negative belief systems that have been deposited in me, throughout my life. So I don't know just because we hit the reset that we can say that everything is brand new because for myself, I was still the same person.
Yeah, and I mean, just to piggyback off of that, y'all know, um, you all know that I'm very transparent, right? So
Okay.
I go, I go for tune-ups, right? Because I found this counseling thing, right, and it worked for
Uh-huh.
me. It worked for me once, so I decided, every now and then, hey, I gotta tune up,
Uh-huh.
and you know, I posted something on social media, and a lot of that stuff is for me. It's not for everybody else. And I say, don't try to decode it because it won't make sense. But what I found out, but what I posted was, I realized that every time I go to the counselor, I leave feeling good, and then I go through this period of in my feelings because it's a revelation of something. And what I learned is that I developed a coping mechanism, and I treated a lot of relationships like business transactions. So kind of
Okay.
to what you were talking about, Saint, was I'm taking a negative mindset and turning it into a positive. So that means I trust
Mhm.
you as far as I trust you enough to know that you're going to make a decision at some point to disappoint me. So I'm only going to
Mm.
let you get so far with me. And I did that
Yeah.
across the board. There was no delineation of who I'm dealing with. It was that
Hmm.
because I said something out loud, which is that, my viewpoint has always been it's someone else's job to try to get whatever it is they're gonna get out of me, and it's my job to give them only what I'm gonna give them, right?
Mm.
And that's what I use to be able to set my boundaries. And what I
Okay.
didn't realize is that the level of toxicity that I created in that I can't make an emotional connection really because of the fact that I've got this boundary there
Hmm.
because I believe our whatever we have is transactional at some level.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so it was like, whoa, now I got to reset. I still got these feelings that now I got to deal with. So I was in my
Hmm.
feelings a little bit yesterday, like, okay, what am I gonna do about this? Right. So,
Hmm.
and that's what shapes my perspective on is it new? Because I've hit the reset button a couple of times, right? I tell people I can't even reset no more. Right? I've reset so much I can't. I don't even, my button is broke. So
So you got to get a whole new player, huh?
right, yeah. I got to start over. You know what I mean? I need some extra lives. That's what I need.
so a thought is that you've done the resetting, you've had your checkups, and this is for you and any brothers out there watching. Is it what's the fear then? Because you kind of know what the issue is, and it seems like it is self. So at what point in time do you trust the process to change your thought that it won't be like it's always been, or I won't approach a situation the way I always viewed it because it's always been a negative consequence to that, or it's been a limit because
Yesterday was acknowledgement. I didn't know it. That's the thing. You
okay.
know, I had to hear myself say it out loud. And I had a conversation with a friend who was, and I was saying some real stuff, right? And this person was saying, "Oh, so and so needs to hear this because that's so them." And it's cool to hear you say that about you. And I'm like, well, a person's only going to acknowledge, what it is they're going to acknowledge when they're ready to acknowledge it, right? It's not hearing me say it. They're gonna, if they hear it from me, they're gonna talk themselves out of it, right? You could tell me I'm this way, that way. You could say something that totally puts my whole experience into perspective, and I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's me. But then I'm gonna use something to say, Tony ain't me. You know what I mean? He ain't been through what I've been through. So I mean, and that's what I'm gonna go with until I'm ready to acknowledge it. But yesterday I had to acknowledge it. It's like I heard myself say it, and sometimes you have to hear yourself say your own BS to realize what it is you're doing, and I acknowledge it. Now I have to figure out what to do with it.
That's so much like us as men, right? And sometimes we can see it glaring right in front of us. We can see what we need to reset, but because of pride or whatever we want to call it, we won't do it. If especially if it feels like it didn't come from us, right? If
Hmm.
somebody else and how they presented it or whatever, they don't know me, this and the other, right? No, but we know deep down inside of ourselves that we need to reset. We know deep down inside of ourselves that we need to put an end to whatever it is that we're doing or whatever path we're heading on, reset, redirect, refocus, and get this thing right.
Yeah,
I
Tony.
can think about many times, man, where just what you're saying, T. Patrick, where you know it was all over, it talking all inside of me, and I was like, nah, that's the such and such. I hope you listen.
Hey, I will present myself with a disclaimer. That's how much I do. Tell her I'm not above my own BS. I just want you to know that. But I did. I'm saying, and that's what I said to my friend, and they're not used to hearing people say that. They're acknowledging that, yeah, I know I could be a mess, especially when my feelings get involved. So I have to be very cognizant to create boundaries so that I don't hurt people's feelings, and I don't, because we talked about destructive, how men destroy, you know,
Hmm.
when they're vulnerable. And I was one of those. I would say whatever I felt, and that's how we got on the conversation, because I said sometimes people take what I'm saying so far out of context. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
don't judge people because of what I've been through. And my experiences cause me not to judge. Even when I feel like I'm being judged, I'll take it, and I will give that person the grace that God gave me, because I didn't deserve grace. And
Hmm.
so as I continue my walk with Christ, that's what I do. So I might just take it,
Hmm.
and say, okay, this person is judging me. That's an internal issue. I'm not going to respond, or I'm going
Hmm.
to alter how I respond to that, because I don't like to be judged. But before, outwardly, I would, man, I could use words to cut a person down that was just downright evil sometimes. But like I said, I dated myself for 3 years, and that really showed me, whoa, do I really sound like that? So that started the reset. But yesterday was a culmination of why I was doing that. So I changed the
Mhm.
behavior, but I didn't change the thought process that caused the behavior,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
It does.
Mhm.
So in other words, you went in and you in terms of you cut the tree down, but you didn't dig up the roots,
Yeah, they were still
right?
there.
So you and when you don't dig up the roots, when you don't pull it completely up out the ground, then it's going. Nature has a way of replenishing itself, right?
Hmm.
Sure
And so
does.
it may take a while, but eventually the tree grows again
Yeah,
because the roots are good. The roots are, is where we find the life, not
yeah,
in what we see above, but is what's beneath.
yeah. And the thing is, I knew that at a subconscious level,
Hmm.
because I would only let myself get so far before I have to take a step back. And what I would do is cut people off, like, because I feel that I'm gonna head this way. And
Hmm.
I think I shared in one of the podcasts or one of the conversations that I had a higher level of responsibility in a certain situation where
Hmm.
I knew what that meant, even though I didn't know what it meant. It was, if you do this,
Hmm.
I'm gonna take my hand up. And it was like, and I and it had me shocked. But I'm glad that happened, because what it did is it got me to the point of recognizing I hadn't dealt with those roots like you just talked about, and it
Hmm.
would have sprouted up. You know what I mean? And I would have reverted back to the same behavior. So I mean, that's why I decided to let me. I've been thinking about this reset. I've been
Uh-huh.
researching, deconstructing the word, looking at the word, the prefix re, and all of that, just to make that point. So I'm glad my internet out.
And man, for those who listening in, for real, this is therapeutic for us. You just get a chance to listen in to us having a conversation about some stuff that's messing with us as men, right? We're not on here to preach or teach to anybody. We're here to really talk through what we're dealing with and really have these transparent conversations about life and how life impacts us, and you just happen to get a chance to listen in to this manhood moment. So we just want to let you know, don't think that what we doing is we giving out advice. What we doing is we're reasoning together and saying, man, what about this situation, what about that situation? You're getting a chance to listen into the locker room. No, man, I got a question. So when we're looking at resetting, we talk about that all the time. One of the questions I want to ask is, what preparation is necessary to properly reset?
I think the first is just your self awareness, your self reflection, thinking about what the issue is. So I think that's where it starts. Because sometimes we look at someone else as the root of possibly the issue, but we have to have an internal look and see what role do you play in it, and then you can start the reset process.
Hmm.
Yeah,
See,
I
Patrick,
mean,
what you think?
yeah, I mean, all of that, right? Plus one, that's what I say, to what Tony said, because you but to add to it, I was having a conversation with somebody I know about her son, and she was talking about, he how talented he is, but he makes bad choices. And I said, well, eventually he'll get to a point to where he's going to recognize that he wants to change, and it's not much we can do beyond that except for encouragement to that point happens. And so once you acknowledge, sometimes it does take a certain stimulus in order for you to change.
Mhm.
Some of the things I went through, if I hadn't gone through it, I
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to recognize that I need to still work on some things in my personal life because I put a lot of focus in my career. But
Mm-hmm.
what got me to counseling was a career setback, and that I didn't know how to deal with. And so I went to try to deal with that, and ended up now
Okay.
I'm talking about things that like how do did how I get brought up got to do with me losing a job, but it a lot of it was connected because there was things that I needed to get to, and I would
Mm-hmm.
not have if everything I had stayed intact. If that makes sense, as long as life was going good, what is the purpose of changing? But I had a stimulus that I couldn't control that caused me to say, okay, now you've got to go here. Fast forward, all right, now I need a tune up because I feel like I got these toxic traits are still there and I want to react a certain way, but I know I can't. So let me go talk to somebody and,
Mm-hmm.
figure out what that is. And like I said, that got me to that point. So, once you acknowledge you want to change, sometimes it still takes you a while to do it. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know because it's a hard job trying to heal yourself. I thought, man, I healed myself before.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process, man.
You, you know, when I think about that question about preparation, right? And one of the challenges with resetting, or at least in my life, has been is the lack of understanding, right? And understanding how to go about resetting. You know, I know I'm heading down a road. I can sense that I'm going down a space that's not going to end up well for me. But I don't quite know how to get off that cycle. Right. One of the I think his name, he's a gospel artist. He's seen this song called Cycles. Right. And we go through those constant cycles and not knowing how to and people say, well, just do it, but it's difficult, right? And so even though I could see the seasons, even though I could see the cycles, I didn't know how to prepare to change it because I didn't have the tools, right? I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to make those necessary changes. And so I continued in those same cycles. Similar to you, T. Patrick, when I went to counseling, and for those who are out there listening, as men, it's important that we have a voice that's more than ours and more than even sometimes our friends, right? Because many times we talking to friends who going through the same stuff we going through, and so we really giving and getting advice from, I won't say fool, but I'll say foolish intentions, right? Because what most of the time for me, and what did it say, man? Just go get something to drink and just, or yes, go across the river, or yes, go to the club, or yes, go to the casino, or yes, go watch a football game or something like that, instead of really dealing with the core issue. And so I had, like you, T. Patrick, I had to get in counseling, man, and be in counseling for 2 years with three different counselors dealing with about 4 or 5 different issues.
Yeah.
Because go ahead, you can go, T Patch.
Now, real quick, I was just going to say that, um, it's 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 necessary, and it's hard, like you pointed out, like we've been talking about, because of the fact that you don't know what you don't know. And if we're talking
Mhm.
to our friends, a lot of times we get ear candy. We're hearing exactly what we want to hear, right? They're telling us, or they're I'm that friend that kind of makes people mad because I tell them what they need to hear, not to hear. So I don't get a whole lot. Well, I get the calls when things are serious, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't get the calls when I want to do something. They don't call me because I'm gonna say something that's gonna make them think. But not everybody will do that, and so that's
Mhm.
that's the thing about getting an objective party to to be able to help you identify, because you figure out your own issues if you're talking to a counselor. They're not gonna tell you what it is. They're just gonna ask you questions until you get to a point. Revelation. That's what happened. I'm like, I figured this out. That's why I was in my feelings because I heard myself saying it and then
Yep.
I'm thinking it like, dang.
Talk about it's me.
But that's how counseling does. They ask you different questions, and when you're talking, you can hear it, and you're like, "Oh, that sounds crazy. I was tripping." But what I was going to point out is just, I think as men, when we're going through the process, that unknown bothers us. Or am I working towards a goal? I think of the analogy of maybe like football. You go 10 yards, you get a first down. You
Hmm.
go 10 more yards, you get a first down. And my goal is to get a touchdown. But when you're going through the reset portion, what are your check marks? Especially when it's yourself, you're like, am I putting in all this work to achieve what the reset is for? But I think as men, we're not taught to really work through our feelings until we go to counseling. I think we've all went to counseling, and the counselor pretty much told us what to work through, what books to read. But just as your bro, it's like you're saying, man, let's go kick it. You'll get over it. But when you wake up the next day, it's the same issue. And I
Yeah.
just think that when you're working through that process, it is, am I achieving a goal, whether it's individually or in a relationship? Because in a relationship, it is, am I doing enough? Are you getting
Hmm.
confirmation? And as men, we'll start pulling back, like, I guess it ain't working
Hmm.
because we haven't been socialized to get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point
Yeah.
because I that's how I developed. Now hearing you talk that's how I developed these boundaries because I went through such turmoil and when I was getting a divorce, um, and I talked about how I would have to. My job is to deal with other people's problems, and I don't want to deal with other people's problems when I got my own
Hmm.
stuff going on. But I know
Exactly.
that. But I know that if I tell Ken that I don't care that Billy sent him 15 emails because I'm worried about something else personal, I won't have that job any longer. So I had to put it aside. And
Uh-huh.
so what I learned was let me break my life down into bits and pieces. And
Okay.
people are going to disappoint you. So how do you mitigate that risk? And mitigating that risk meant limiting access, limiting expression of feelings. There were times I was shut down. Now I say everything I feel, you know, because emotions are a new space for me. I never really allowed myself to really feel. Well, I did
Mm.
feel, but it got deep and it was like, whoa, okay. So I like the feeling, but I don't really understand it.
It felt strange to you.
Well, it felt good to me.
Okay.
It was foreign. I didn't
Hmm.
know what to do with it, and so I could know stuff, right? Maybe this is a temporary situation, but you know what I mean. I like the feeling, so I'm gonna go with that. You
Hmm.
know, because I promise you, I'll keep people around that I know that don't like me because they're useful. You know what I mean? And they don't even know it. They think I like them. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't trust you as far as but I need you close to me because I need to see something.
Yeah.
Right? I need to watch you. Whatever it is that I need. And so like I said, I had to break my life down into bits and pieces, and that was my
Hmm.
coping mechanism. But it wasn't healthy because I never let people in. I didn't give people a chance. It was like, I don't know if I was looking for things, but you know, I just, I would privately take note and be like, okay, I know how to deal with you now.
Hmm. Yep. And make that decision mentally
Hmm.
and say, okay, and no matter what, from that point forward, that's the space you're gonna be in.
Yeah. You,
You're gonna be in that position, because that's the position you earned. So going forward, I'm gonna make sure I keep you there.
yeah,
You
and
know.
if I couldn't find any use for you, you got cut off. But if you was useful, I keep you around.
When you think about this, idea of resetting. I'm gonna throw a question out there. Have you ever reset and then regretted it?
And then regretted it?
And regretted it after you did it?
Yeah. Well, well, I try not to live with regret, um, because the experience is important, regardless of the truth. I would have made different choices, and
Mhm.
I acknowledge that I should have made different choices in the reset. That's why I said I've done it a couple times. So you know what I mean. Sometimes you run into another wall, and you got to back up, and figure a new way. And I think that's part of the journey,
Mhm.
is the fact that even when you hit that reset button, you might, you know, there's no straight path. You're gonna have to
Yeah,
jump over stuff and climb through stuff. It's gonna happen.
Hmm.
I just nothing can pop in my head right away. I'm sure it has happened in the past, but like C. Patrick said, is at this stage of my life, I've taken the lessons from the reset. Whether it wasn't what I expected, what I'd hoped for, but I've learned something somewhere based on that experience.
Hmm. Hmm. That would be an interesting conversation if we had a group of men to take a poll to see if they ever did a reset and then look back and was like, man, I shouldn't have done that one.
Yeah, I got
Right?
a question
Go ahead.
for you guys. Since we're working through resetting and everything, do you think it's better to do it individually and pretty much by yourself and well in silence, or talking to somebody?
Hmm.
It depends. It really depends on what the reset is, because, um, like I said, sometimes the people in our circle mean well, but they value their relationship with us, and if we're not open enough to receive the constructive feedback,
Hmm.
we don't like even in my career, I'm not going to hire people all the time that are going to agree with me, because I need you to challenge me and my thought process, because I'm the type that will walk in and say, I need to check if my head is on straight. This is what I'm thinking, and I need somebody to poke holes. I had to write a paper for work, like a term paper, and I presented it to my team, and they didn't rip it up, but it was a rough conversation.
It was red
And
everywhere.
listen, the the global head of ER for our group called me after the meeting to reassure me that my paper was good, you know. But I told him, I said that was honestly that was the point, because I'm communicating two levels up, and I there are things I can't see, so
Uh-huh.
I anticipated that, so that I know now what questions they're going to ask, so that I
Hmm.
can answer them. And
Hmm.
now, we were my goal was aggressive. I'm planning to move it out 2 more weeks,
Hmm.
um, to give us a little bit more time to socialize the plan. But everybody was aligned that we need to do it. And what happened is today everything start moving to make this thing happen. And that was the
Hmm.
whole point, because it was a stalled process. And but if you're not ready for that, you might have to move in silence. That's my point. Because, you know, if you're just gonna hear if you're just gonna get that ear candy, oh, it's gonna be all right, or yeah, let's just go kick it. Don't even worry about, oh yeah, leave so and so alone, right? When you know this person is good for you, they just getting on your nerves. Leave so and so alone, and you follow suit with that, because we got some bad advice, because you heard what you wanted to hear in that moment in your emotions. So it's really about intelligence and maturity?
I think for me, the choice on whether I do it silently and alone versus if I do it under the or with the assistance of someone else has a lot to do with trust, right? And so if I'm in a space where I feel like I can trust the individual you know, or feel like it's a safe space, then chances are I'll share what I'm dealing with in the process that I'm going through. But if I'm in a space where I feel unsafe and insecure, about about my choice, where I am, whether or not this person has my best interest in mind, whether or not this person will make sure I'm safe emotionally, mentally, then I'm probably going to do it on my own. I'm probably going to work in that space. And I've spent quite a bit of my life in lonely spaces because of my inability to be able to trust the spaces around me. I've told you all, I had shirt that says standing alone in a multitude of millions because always feeling like I was alone. And like I had to make those decisions and the voices that probably should have been there to listen and help with the reset, I didn't feel like, and when I say care or safety, I mean that person actually would take the time and let it just be about me at that moment, right? And not think about how what I'm doing is going to impact them. And sometimes that's not the case with men because even in the most loving relationships, and we say, well, I really need feel like I need to do this, I really feel like I need to do that, and then that person is sitting there and they appear to like they have your best interest in mind, but in actuality they're, they may be sitting there thinking, what's in it for, how is this going to affect me, right? And so now there's selfish motives, and to me that's an unsafe space because I'm going to genuinely listen, and support what's best for you without me being involved, and so for me. That's how I would look at whether or not I need to move, how I need to move with the reset.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with that thought too, because mine is more in silence, and that's just based on trust. And
Hmm.
I would even say just being that vulnerable, being that just naked to just leave it out there. But then when I thought about it, when you trust a person or a couple of people, then they can give you some guidance, even like a push that you are striving, you're doing the right thing. So I think sometimes talking, if you have somebody you can talk to, that they can check in with you. Hey man, are you okay? And it
Hmm.
could just be that little bit that helps you continue the process. But I think I know for me it is being vulnerable, completely vulnerable to somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's been easier to do that self-reflecting, resetting by myself.
I think about some years ago when I would go to Manpower with Bishop Jakes, and one of the things he said one year, probably the first year that I went, was men cry hard, but we don't cry long, right? And so we nobody can beat us. I mean, we are well, and we're really truly deeply hurt, but we're not going to stay in that position very long. And most men who stay in that position too long end up hurting themselves or others. So it's almost like we have to just recover real quickly, right?
Yep.
Just even for the safety of others. People don't understand that when a man, if that man stays in that depressed state for a long period of time or in that angry state for a long period of time, something's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? And so he said, men cry hard, but we don't cry long. And so as I thought about that in relationship to the idea of resetting, sometimes we need to stay there longer, but we're not in this space where we feel like we can actually really get it all out, right? It's we're not in the safe space where we feel like we can really release it all, so we can move forward in a more healthy mindset,
Yeah.
so we
And,
can move forward in a better. Think about it from this vantage point. I know we're getting close to our time. We're trying to stay within that hour, but think about it from this vantage point. If that man is half decent of a man, he got a decent job, he's educated, whatever the case is, you know what I mean. He ain't out there, tripping or whatever the case is. He don't really have to ever be alone. Most of the time, most men make a decision to either be by themselves or they make a decision to be with multiple individuals, so they don't have to worry about one person letting them down, right?
yeah.
Being in a space where it's a whole lot of individuals. No, but no matter what his situation is, he really don't have to be alone and have to process through what he's dealing with. If he's going to process through, it's normally an intentional situation where he feels like he really needs to do some things to help himself heal and get better, come to that point of awareness, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's, I guess what I was getting at, which is, making that intentional step to go through the pain. Like, emotions is a it's a new frontier for me. So I'm
Hmm.
exploring it. And there are some times I spend some time in a particular state so that I could deal with those emotions. And it sucked going through it, but on the
Hmm.
other side, I was able to gain clarity on, okay, there are some things that I still need to work on,
Hmm.
and if I hadn't spent that time intentionally by along exploring those feelings, why do I feel like this? You know, how did I get here? I wouldn't have done that. But it is, it's a scary place. And
Hmm.
as part of my coping mechanism has been to, all right, how do I use? And that's what I mean by useful. I don't mean use people, but I mean, if you are causing that stimulus in my life to make me look at certain things, I will keep you
Hmm.
around because at that moment you're serving that purpose for me instead of cutting people off at that point. But if it's extracurricular, like that, you know, I'm not going to argue with you just because we're arguing or because you know me. You have to add value, and so it was that piece. But I know that a lot of men are don't want to do it because it's terrible.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah, it is. Man, I think about it from this lens when I'm thinking about Tony's question and the idea of doing it alone, right? And I think biblically speaking, when the one thing that God said wasn't good in the whole creation process was the fact that man was alone, right? Everything else
Yep.
was good. It was great. This was good. This was good. And then he looked and said, "It's not good that man be alone." But when we're in a situation where we're so messed up on the inside, there's so much confusion about whether we need this is a period we need to be alone because people tell you need to be by yourself, be by yourself, be by yourself. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, the last 6, 7 years, I felt like I was by myself. So now you telling me to come from a space where I was by myself, felt like I was in a space where I was with somebody, but by myself. Now you telling me to go into a space and intentionally isolate myself and add more mental health issues to my situation, right? So it's all this confusion out there about how to go through the reset, how to process through the reset, and what works for me as an individual, right?
And that's it. It's an individual decision. What works for me isn't going to work for you, isn't going to work for the next man. But there are some components that might be useful that you can pick up on. But you've got to understand your emotional space to understand what works best, in my opinion. And
Mhm.
that's what I took away from the resets that I've done because I've done it alone. I've done it with people. And the thing
Mhm.
is, you can do it alone, but you will never fully heal anyway. So then you'll be alone for the rest of your life if you're trying to get yourself right before you connect with people. Sometimes you need those people to cause that stimulus. But it is, you got to be careful and understand whether or not you gotta, safety is important, and if you
Hmm.
don't feel safe, it's gonna be difficult to have those people around, and that's where if you ain't a safe person, I gotta cut you off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're up against really the end, and I had just another question that dealt with what would you tell a guy who is too emotionally spent, his tank is empty to even start the reset? I assume because of time, probably say, hey, go to counseling.
No, we're
But
good.
that's something that I wanted to delve into. That what if somebody is just so emotionally spent, whether it's at work or in a relationship, that they don't even have it in them to even they've identified what the issue is, but they're just emotionally spent. They just don't have nothing to give to get to that point.
Wow.
Hmm.
You wow. There, rarely are we stumped, ladies and gentlemen, or gentlemen, right? But I mean, that's a really really good question. Um, there, how do you muster up that energy? Um, and what I would say really is
Hmm.
that you kind of have to, put things into perspective from a life standpoint. What's important? um, you know, I knew I had responsibility and I knew I could lean on responsibility, even though I didn't know what to do from an emotional standpoint because I was such a wreck. What I was thankful for was, all right, God, I'm glad that you didn't take my career and my personal life at the same time because I wouldn't know what to do. But I at
Hmm.
least got my career and I'm good at that. So I'm gonna go be good at that until I figure out how to be good emotionally.
Hmm.
Um, it was tough, but you know, and I have children, so I've got to put food on the table, and
Hmm.
that's what I use to give me that encouragement to find that energy because I didn't have it. I was sick of everybody.
Hmm. I would say, in thinking about that, that was a really good question. And like T. Patrick said, very rarely do we get
I
stumped, but
know.
you know, because we got all the answers. Didn't y'all know that on
That's right.
listening in? You need to pay attention to this podcast because we got the answers now. But I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, for me, what I would tell them is to stand still, right? Because that's some of the best advice I was given was when you're in the middle of a storm, the worst thing you could do if you're in the middle of a life storm, the worst thing you could do is make decisions based off that storm, right? And so sometimes as men we do have to stand still. And standing still feels like we're not going anywhere, but by standing still, we're allowing ourselves to regain some strength, right? Because we're used to lifting. We're used to carrying loads, many of us. Whether, and I know people out there might say, with men and he ain't taking care of his family, this, that, but he's still carrying the load of being a man. Don't ever believe that because that man is not doing something or is doing something that's not a load in his life, right? Inactive or active is still a load and it still wears on that man. He may smile like it's not, he may laugh like everything good, but trust me, there's a load that's going on. And that load called life, called manhood, is wearing him down. So the best thing you can do in a situation where it's full of a storm and he's already weak is to not do anything. It's to stand still. And I think back on what remember Brother Dean's. He was one of our first guests, and he mentioned, and I believe this with all my heart: stand still and look to a power that's higher than any human power. So get in that space with our creator, which is what Manhood Moments is about. It's about getting back into the right place with our creator, getting back into a right space where we can actually talk to God and God give us the answer that we need, right? Don't do nothing. Don't go to the right. Don't go to the left. Stand still and look up and talk.
Definitely. Because I can think, so the thought made me think of few years back when I had a lot on my plate, and I knew enough to go to my mental health counselor, and he was able to point out everything that I was successful in. And he was like, why not here? So that was a way that you can process. I feel like for anybody that if you're successful in other ways, just try to transfer that thought and that energy to, okay, I'm successful in A, B, C, D, and E. Why not this over here or whatever it is? So me personally, that helped me out. But I've had the process of going to a therapist, and not everybody has it. I know guys, they're just, some guys are, I feel like giving up. I feel like quitting because they've been beat down on the job, or they've been beat down in a relationship, emotionally, not physically, but emotionally. So,
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing, real quick, is the fact that we gave what sounds like three different answers to a question. But if we deconstruct it, we all pretty much said the same thing, right? Is basically nobody moved, right? I focused on what I was good at. Tony was focused on where he was successful, but we were standing still.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to point that out because, if you listen too quickly, it sounds like we kind of all over the place, but we're not. I mean, we really said the same thing because it's all about putting it into perspective. I didn't leave my job. I couldn't, but I had to focus on something good so that I could figure out how to deal with the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I am spiritual, so I talk to my creator because and I've said this. God don't have to tell me stuff twice anymore. I've learned through that process when he tell me, yeah, and I know it's him. Okay, you show right.
That's it. That's it. So, fellas, we at the end, but I have one last question that we always close out with, that final thought. But I'm going to pose a question to frame your final thought. Okay, and so that question, and we'll start with Tony, and then we'll go to T Patrick, and I'll finish it up. I need you to share an a time where you had to reset, and I need you to dig a little deeper than just the surface and share a time where you had to reset. And I want you to share at least one of the strategies that you used to reset, and then how did that benefit you?
okay.
Turn this on you.
All right. I would say I've been married for going on 20 years. So probably about 10, probably more, a little bit more than 10 years ago, I know I was the cause of an issue in our marriage. And I had to sit back and self reflect on I was the issue. And when I went to my wife, and it was on her to put faith back in me, but it was, I'm not this person that caused this action. And I'm moving forward, and you can come with me or not. And I respect that, but this is the direction that I'm going. And I was in a totally different headspace. So that helped with the marriage at that time. And that was going to a counselor, but understanding I was the root cause of the specific issue. I was, I shouldn't mean holding a grudge, but I know my actions was not one of listening, respect, things like that. It was just I had anger, and I had a wall just put up, and I just had to work through the process that, okay, man, look yourself in the mirror. You are the issue. Work on yourself first. So then it is understanding myself, why I was behaving the way I was, and then identifying, okay, I worked through the process. I am healed for the most part. Hey, this is where I'm at, and I'm moving forward. And honestly, I felt like a hypocrite at that time, but it because it was I need you to put faith in me that this is the direction that we're going to go. So that was pretty much my process. And after going through that process, I know now when I'm not feeling like myself, that when my temper starts coming back or I'm short, that I need that reset with the mental health guy, or just to know that it's me. There's something going on and I need to work on myself.
Hmm. And that was it. Thank you for sharing, being transparent. T. Patrick, talk
You
to
know,
us.
I got to throw a music reference in. So Michael Bublé has a great song called "Home," and in it he talks about uh, he's on the road living his dream, but he feels like he's living somebody else's life. And there was a period in my life where I was doing just that. I was living up to the expectations and the um, everything that I was raised to believe is success. Um, I was accomplishing, educated, married, great job, 2 kids, a dog, great, right? But I realized I became depressed, and it was because I wasn't living my life. I was living what I was taught, and the reset was taking my life back, and I really had to go through it was a lot of pain points because that meant making some people disappointed or upset for my own happiness, and I had to get comfortable with that. I really had to, and that's hard. When the people you love the most look at you differently because of the fact that you're making choices that they don't necessarily agree with. What I can say is time heals that, because I become happy because I'm living the life I want to live. Maybe not everything is in place the way I want it, but it is the life I live. And part of it was just finding myself. What do I want to do? What makes me happy? Not from a selfish standpoint, but understanding I have responsibility, but at the same time, I can have responsibility and be happy. And that's shedding the expectations that were placed upon me, on what I was told based upon, just I was raised in society, right? Um, and that's was my process, and some of it was destructive, some of it was going through counseling, some of it was self-reflection, some of it was isolation. It was a lot of different tools that I used, but in all of those tools I gained different perspective. And so, it got me to the point to where, again, I'm still learning daily, but at least I can recognize now when certain things trigger me, and I know, okay, now I need to either I need to limit access, cut off access, or I need a tune up, because, we all have, you know, issues that we bring to the table. It's just part of life. Everybody doesn't treat us the way we think they should, and we have to learn to understand that life's a personal journey for everybody, and a lot of stuff is just not personal.
Man, yeah, you know, two very transparent moments. For me, fellas, so I've been married. I'm in my fourth marriage. And I'm not even, I'll be right at the knocking on the door of 50, but I was in the third marriage. And my brother died. My biological brother died. I got the call that night, the night before Easter. And um, my mom told me just come over. We was cooking dinner. Everybody was supposed to come to the house. and we were cooking dinner, and I was in this marriage, the third marriage, and so the next morning, Easter morning, I had to go for my parents and take them to identify my little brother's body because they came and told her and knocked on the door or whatever and gave a message and then you know and being there at that coroner's office and seeing my brother and then getting specifics about where he passed and going back to that space and literally spending some time in that space where he took his last breath and then going over the next couple days um, with taking him, taking care of his arrangements because my parents just couldn't do it. It was at that point, man, that I realized that my brother had substance abuse issues and mental health, so we call it dual diagnosis. And I realized, and I told my mom this. I said, "You have two sons that have life-threatening issues. One, his issues took him away from here because my brother died of an overdose, a fatal overdose. And one whose issues are trying to take him away from here. And I was unhappy inside. Had accomplished a lot, but still just unhappy and empty, and kind of tired of doing some of the same things and being tempted to do some of the same things, unfaithfulness, all that other stuff. And I I didn't do drugs and alcohol but I medicated in other ways. And so it was at that point, man, that for me, I had to reset. And that's where, when I talk about, starting to go to that counseling and dealing with that, but through that process, I came to a crossroad. And that crossroad for me was about whether or not the changes that was happening in me could be sustained in the space that I currently was in. That wasn't just the marriage, that was where I was living, that was the job. It was the whole everything. So my reset was everything. It was difficult. It was a faith walk. It was accepting my responsibility for the things that I had done and for the mistakes that I made, not once, not twice, but three times, because I was using the same formula each time. And then finding the strategies to not be that man anymore, getting to that root. And that was a hard process, especially when you discover something about yourself and you want to share it. You go to share it, and it gets kind of like, oh, that whatever, that ain't true. This, that, but yeah, man, that's really me. That's it. And so, man, by going through that process and really dealing with those things, I can honestly say that at this period in my life, not no reflection on any or anyone else or whatever. This is literally my best life. I wake up in peace. I go to sleep in peace. My relationship with God is stronger than ever. Is restored, and that came, man, from the reset. And God has just done things that and release weights that I've been carrying since I was a child. So sometimes, man, them resets. they don't feel good to you, but they end up being good for you. This has been one of the most challenging podcasts, I think, if anybody's listening in, because it's not been something where we just come together and just decide. When we're talking about resetting, and whoever listening in or whoever listened to this 2021 or 2030, we want to let you know, man, that you too can reset. I know make mistakes. I know people hurt us. All those things exist. But you can reset. You can start fresh. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. You can start fresh. So we want to encourage you, as we always do with every one of these podcasts, that whatever you're dealing with today, come out of that space of hiding. Have your manhood moment. Let the world know that this is your manhood, and your manhood is your mission. If you enjoyed what you hear, we're glad. If you take something back with you, we're glad. We appreciate that. But above everything else, we want to let you know this is your moment. As always, appreciate my brothers joining us at the table. We're going to pray. We're going to let you go. Lord, we thank you. We appreciate everything that you've done for us. We thank you for the men and the women and whoever is listening in on this podcast today, tomorrow, years from now, that whatever they're resetting in their life, that they would have the wisdom, the strength, the knowledge, the fortitude, the wherewithal to be able to work through it and get through it. No weapon formed against them should prosper. No weapon can overtake them. And so, Lord, we just thank you for just being our God and for continuing to cover us and to keep us above everything else. Thank you now. Amen.